Go live. All right, everyone. And, you know, as you are tuning in right now, you're going to notice something a little bit different. And that is that we are not talking to each other through a browser.
Nope.
We are talking to each other live, in person, in the flesh. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
I know. So I'm with Carol Vernon. We're going to get started officially in just a second. But if you're tuning in right now, please let us know in the chat box. Let us know if you can hear us, if you can see us, if everything is working out well. I really hope it is. And I hope everyone's having a fabulous Tuesday so far. So if you want to just type in and tell us if you can hear us and see us okay. So I'm going to look down here. This is where our monitor is. I'm going to hope that it's all going well. And nobody's typing anything. Hi, Cecilia. You can see us and hear us okay? Sorry about the AV check, guys. I just want to make sure before we get started. Awesome.
Hi, Cecilia.
Awesome.
Great to be with you.
Hey, and the Member Clicks crew. Great to see you. I mean, I am so excited. Listen, you know that Association Chat every week is something that we look forward to. This is a weekly conversation where we bring together, Carol, we bring together the thought leaders, the trailblazers, so that we can all come together and learn from each other. And so this week we have a very, very special guest. We're talking about closing 2017 in a strong way, thriving as we go into 2018. We have 55 days left in the year.
Wow.
55 days left in the year.
Seems almost unbelievable, doesn't it?
It does.
The year has flown by.
It really has.
Yep.
And so for this particular association chat, I am with Carol Vernon, who is an executive coach extraordinaire. How would you describe yourself when you do your elevator pitch? How would you describe yourself?
Well, by title, I'm an executive coach. My passion is helping people develop. It's really, I'm in the people development field, and my focus is helping people really strengthen their presence, really focus on how they're doing it. I'm almost always working with really competent people, so I help really competent people in the association community get even better by focusing on the how they're building relationships, how they show up.
Let me tell you about that showing up part. I had heard about you, Carol, for years. People kept telling me that I had to meet up with you. And so finally, I think it was at the end of last year, there was sort of this back and forth. We knew that we should get together. Yeah. And when we finally did, I have to tell this story. I mean, time flew by and the conversation could have kept going. And so since then, I've had the pleasure and delight and good fortune of being able to talk with Carol several times. And, you know, every single time I walk away with value. So I'm really super excited about finding out, you know, how we can close out 2017 strong. And the first question I want to ask you, and then I'm going to let you just roll.
Terrific.
Is I want to ask you, you know, a lot of people would look at this and they'd say, you know what, can't we just wait till January when it's like, you know, January resolutions, the new year? Why should I be looking at closing out 2017 when in a strong way when it's pretty much already done?
Yeah. Terrific question. Great place for us to start. I want to echo back the same thing. When you and I were able to first really get to connect, I'd heard your name a million times, and it was just terrific. That idea of relationships and building relationships. Who do we learn from? Who's learning from us? How do we do great things together? So a real pleasure. I'm really glad to be with you today. Glad to be with everyone today. Terrific way for us to get started. Easy to think about the beginning of the year, but the end, how things come to a close, matters every bit as much. I became really interested in this idea of thinking about the kind of preparing the end of the year, thinking about times that for a lot of us, point out 55 days. That's not a lot of time before the end of the year. And what I started noticing over, you know, the last good number of years actually, was as we got closer to the end of the year, oftentimes leaders that were really strong, that showed up really well as managers and as forward-looking leaders, under stress, were showing up a little bit differently. Teams that had worked together really well, that were creative, that could handle stress, that could handle conflict. Productive teams know how to move through, if you will, through stressful periods to get to the end. It's not just about how you start.
Right.
That matters a lot, but how you get to the end. So I really became curious and started digging deeper in what was it about the end? What was it about the, sort of those people who are able to handle more stress? And the reality is, some of us are more stressed. I want to say stress resistant, or at least we know how to minimize it. Some of us do, and some of us don't. And therein was sort of like, ooh, I'm going to dig in and I want to sort of see what are some of those pieces. So I look forward to talking about what are some of those behaviors that I've seen others do to grow, sort of, if you will, a resiliency muscle. Like anything else, it's something you need to work at.
Well, I love that. And actually, so you guys know, we had gone through a practice. We had set this up where we wanted to check the tech and everything before this chat, and discovered that, we were having some issues. Yeah. But then I found out, you guys, that we live not that far from each other, actually. So along with being able to see your lovely book collection, I feel like we practiced a little bit of resilience. We found a new answer. And so how does this example play into like what you've discovered about resilience?
That is such a terrific example. Well, thank you for sharing that, because resiliency is needed in all kinds of things. Look, we face adversity, we face challenges. We had a tech challenge. We face tech challenge. We're going through transition. How many of us in our associations are finding change? I mean, it's we say again and again, it's the norm. Things are changing all the time. For some of us, this can be extraordinarily difficult. Resiliency is about developing the ability to cope and manage through stress, through change, adversity, all the kinds of things, and to tap in to the creativity of, we live right near each other. Let's do it in person.
I mean, it was perfect. The only thing that would make it more perfect is wine.
Yeah. And we have coffee.
But we have coffee,
so that's good.
So we're caffeinated, yes.
That's good. But adversity is a reality for all of us. Things happen. They happen in our work lives all the time. End of year is often a time when, oh gosh, we're on really tight deadlines. Maybe we've got budget pieces. Maybe for those managing people, they've got performance reviews. End of year can be a very, very stressful time in our work. Very common. It sometimes can be the completion of a team. Maybe our teams work together on a project through the year and now they're closing down. And then turn to the personal side. We're whole beings. We are, we have got obviously our work is really important to us, our personal lives, all the relationships. If you're in the middle of raising a family, you're in the middle of helping your generation above you or the generation below you. If you're in the middle of a big volunteer challenge, something you're working with, if you're involved in a marathon and you're in the middle of training. All these kinds of things require a lot of input from us. Stress happens in all, if you will, again, in all parts of our lives. In fact, if I may share this real quickly, the idea of stress, people say the biggest stress for them is managing difficult relationships.
Wow, I believe it.
Yeah, not just at work.
Yeah. Oh no.
Think about the holidays. There might be a difficult relationship that you're going to.
Mine's arriving at DCA. Mine will be showing up at Reagan Airport very soon. Actually, yes. My difficult relationship. Yes.
There's a lot of things. We've got a lot of parties to go to. Remember, we're hardwired differently. There's neither good nor bad. We are who we are. So some of us look forward to the holidays and we are so excited. We can't wait to see others. Oh my gosh, I'm going to see big crowds. It's going to be great fun. And then there's other people. Oh my gosh, the holidays. I've got to be on. I've got to be going to these things. I'm running around all the time. We are hardwired differently.
Yes.
So by understanding more about ourselves, sort of that self-aware, get to know ourselves, really dig deep and think, wait, what about this is causing me stress? Then we can start self-managing. Okay, what are the resiliency behaviors?
Right.
What's serving other people well that I might want to sort of apply to my life?
And so what are some examples of that? I mean, when I'm looking at, like I said, I shared a little bit much, which I tend to do. that my difficult relationship on the personal side is coming in. Like, I have my own business. I am a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. I'm all of these different things, trying to balance it all.
Yep.
And I certainly want to, I want to be successful in all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is, we are actually going into a very challenging time. And so what advice would you give me?
Yeah, love how you're coming at that. And it's the very first part of being really aware of it, sort of recognizing, okay, we're getting close to the end of the year. There's a lot in these 55 days that may cause stress. Yes. It's not to heighten it, but it's to create awareness so we can think about that. The behaviors that I have seen over the years, and certainly there's quite a bit, there's plenty of research for those who want to dig deeper. At UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, Professor Martin Seligman, Seligman, has written extensively on this. He's got a book called Building Resilience, where you can start looking at some of the research around this. But what again, I've identified by observing my clients, by observing the association teams I work with, is about 5 core things. First is looking at what's within our control, really focusing on that. And let's go into more depth if we can. I'd love to share stories.
I think that's great. And you guys, if you see me looking down, it's because the monitor is down here. And I want to see if you are participating in this live. One of the best benefits is that you're able to ask these questions, and I can approach Carol with them right now, live, while you're watching. So I'll keep my eye on here every now and then. But yeah, if we may, let's dig into this a little bit deeper.
Absolutely. First, we'll look at circles of control.
Okay.
Then we'll talk about relationships.
Sounds good.
Because really smart people know what kind of relationships they need. It's not just like all relationships aren't created equally. We need to know what we need. So what we need. So let me put that as the second one. The third one, let's look at is the idea of setting boundaries, and that goes beyond no. No is, for some people, we don't like to say no. It's really hard for me to say no. Well, guess what? There's other ways that one sets boundaries. So when we talk about boundaries, sometimes no is the appropriate boundary, but there's other ways. There's other things.
Yeah.
The fourth is around prioritizing self-care. Like anything else, we prioritize the time we spend with those we care about. We prioritize all kinds of things in our lives. Prioritizing self-care so that we can move forward. And then that fifth piece, and this is a hard one to, I think, to always get people to take seriously, but is the idea of we live in a society that values deep, just keep going. Come on, work a little harder. It's almost the end of the year. Come on, put it all in for the end of the year. That becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we work, we continue to push, we deplete ourselves. When we're depleted, we're not at our most creative. We're not in a position to be able to continue to move forward. So we need to talk about the reality of how do we replenish? How do we rebuild? It doesn't just look like stop. It looks like something different than that.
Wow.
Well, let me share some stories, if I may.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yes, absolutely.
Let's look first at the idea of control.
Okay.
For some of us, we're maybe familiar with the framework. It's familiar to you, the idea of circles of control?
Circles of control, no. Nope.
A very simple framework of thinking about what's within our control. If you will, if you're listening to us, think about drawing on paper 3 circles: an inner circle, the first outer circle, and then a third circle. I would say the furthest circle out. The inner circle is what we call our circle of control. What do we control?
Right.
We primarily control ourselves,
right.
What we do, and then how we react to other things. So that's that inside circle. What's within our control. The next circle out is influence. What's within our influence? We're not certain what we control there, but we may have some influence. And then that third circle is the part that's out of our control. And what the behavioral research shows us, that when we are able to get ourselves in a mindset of, I have either control or influence here, as opposed to it's all out of my control, there's nothing I can do, it's very difficult to truly show up as a resilient professional, as a resilient human being.
Wow.
If we think it's being done to me,
right,
everything's being forced on me, we show up really differently.
Sure. Well, I mean, we go into victim mode.
Exactly.
We go into this place where, and in that way, it's like we're giving away our power. you know?
Exactly. You nailed it. That's exactly it. When we focus on what's within our control, we find ourselves becoming resilient again. We find ourselves being more creative. We go into the decision, sort of the decision-making place. We can come up with alternatives, other ways to explore things. It's a very different place. When we're in the place of influence, that's a reality of, I may not be in control here. This may not all be, what I want to do. Where do I have influence? And working with teams, I have a terrific sort of sense of where people move from that place of control to influence to, okay, there's nothing I can do here. And sometimes it's a subtle place. Very frequently people say, well, I don't have any control here. We start pushing back. We say, well, what about influence? What could you do to influence this?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because it's a mind shift. And I think that, when you start thinking about the ways that you do have influence, and it doesn't just mean leveraging your relationships, but that's part of it too.
Absolutely.
There are so many other options available to us rather than those where we just have this sort of gut response, a knee-jerk response where if it doesn't immediately work, it's like, well, that didn't work, and we give up. There are so many other ways to do things, and I like the idea of looking at, okay, does this fall into my realm of influence, and what does that mean?
It's a powerful way to start building that resiliency muscle, is to, as you say, not allow ourselves to move to that, certainly the victim place, but to move to a place where there's almost a burden. Again, end of year, the way we finish, we want to finish strong. And if we end that year in a place of, this is not within my control. And there certainly are times things are not within our control. It's not to, sort of happy talk here and say, well, you should be able to change that. Of course, there are times when things are out of our control.
So Cecilia says here, she says, I find it's helpful to say what is in my control. She said, thanks, Carol. You need to practice saying that. You need to practice saying like this, what is in your control. Like, hey, I can control my response to this person. I can control how I show up in my workplace. That's great.
Yeah, as to say, I love the fact that the idea of self-talk. We know that's powerful.
Yeah,
we can talk ourselves up and we can talk ourselves down. And when we look at that circles of control, sometimes we'll talk with somebody, what's within your control, from the most basic place. Somebody feels they're working on a timeline. Maybe it's a project deadline that they say it's just there's nothing I can do. They make it all external. There's nothing I can do. It's being driven by external forces. So it all feels like they're out of their control. And I'll ask them to look at, well, within your control is how you're going to plan to meet that deadline.
Right.
So there's certainly a part that's in your control. Within the influence, is there a conversation to be had? Is there a recommendation to be made? Is there a possibility of it? So perhaps, and perhaps not. Obviously, every situation is different. But the moving to that place of out of your control, I would suggest it really never moves into out of control. It means then making a decision of, okay, then I've got 12-hour days for the next 2 weeks to complete this project.
We're talking about it like it's so easy, but I think that a lot of us, it is, and I'll cop to this real fast.
Me too.
And it could be a deadline. It could be the boundaries that I think have been established for a project. And instead of exploring and explaining and talking and, having this discussion about, well, things have changed, or this is my view of this. What do you think? Here's what I suggest. In my mind, there's this sort of adversarial thing happening where I'm like, they're crazy if they think that I should turn this in at this point. What are they thinking? And I mean, poor people, like on the other side of it, I haven't given them a chance to say anything, like I'm sure that if we had that conversation, things would be okay. But in my mind, I already jumped to that adversarial position, not all the time, but probably most of the time.
Yeah.
And try to work towards, okay, what can I do to get the project done or to handle this sticky situation? How can we better, I don't know, how do we practice this? What are some things that we can do to maybe make that shift happen faster?
Terrific question. And this is really, it goes to that place of self-aware. When you stop and say it, when you own that, that's when you can begin to do something about it. So if we don't own the fact of, I want to say, when we get small there, when we start to listen to that internal saboteur, there's nothing you can do, use it's sort of the victim mentality, we lose our stronger executive presence. That's when we're not showing up at our best.
Right.
The end of the year is one of the, I want to say, one of the most important times to think about your presence. To really think about, how am I showing up every day? Again, you've created awareness, intention. How am I showing up? To really think about, we know there's a lot more stress over the next 55 days in all parts of our worlds. All of us are looking at different stresses over the next 55 days. Lots of it's great. We're looking forward to it. Hey, it's going to be great to finish that project, or it's going to be terrific to be with family, whatever it might be. But we also know it's causing stress. So creating that awareness so we can start self-managing, so we can get ourselves back to that place where we're more confident, where we start thinking, the stress closes down that creative part of our brains. It allows us to start talking to ourselves in ways that I wouldn't talk to anyone that way. To sort of say to myself when I feel I'm at it, in that, though I have no control, that feeling of, oh, come on, figure this out. Well, I'd never talk with anyone like that. Yeah. I would sort of step back and say, hey, what can we do here? I'd go back to that place of, where's influence? I accept the reality. Sometimes we can't do anything, but there's lots of things we can do. So, Cecilia, I love your noting that piece of, you talk to yourself. You give yourself that positive talk.
Yes.
The second piece is that idea of relationships, and you brought that up. Relationships is being very, very aware of, who do I need during these periods, and I'm going to sort of stay to the same place. Who do I have to protect myself from?
Okay, yes.
It's
so true.
Being aware. Relationships matter.
Yeah.
But relationships cannot come at the cost of self. So, give you an example. Janice is a terrific association leader. Now, needless to say, Janice's name is changed to protect the innocent, but she is a terrific leader, and it's an entirely different name. At any rate, Janice, a terrific leader in an organization going through a lot of change. Let's just say a lot of that team chose to sort of pull it down. It chose to see this from a place out of our control. We have no control of this. There was lots of negativity. Janice, again, name changed, looked at this from a place of, oh, this is really interesting. I can learn through this. Now, the minute you hear somebody say that, you're like, oh, wow, she's got an unbelievable resilient muscle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is somebody who not just knows how to go through adversity, how to adapt, how to change. This is the high end. This is like the super strong muscle. This is the person who has figured out how to, I want to say, strengthen, learn, grow through the stress.
Oh, I love that. Are you guys getting chills right now? Because I'm feeling this like inside. If I were listening to this as an audiobook or something, inside, you might be listening to this as a podcast later. This is where I'd feel that, because I'm feeling it, the surge inside. It's like,
it was so much fun to work with Janice, because Janice, we stepped back and we said, who does she need?
Yeah.
There was lots of negativity. So it's not to say Janice wasn't living in the real world. She had to address that. She had a lot of colleagues, including people who reported to her, that were very, very challenged by this situation. So it wasn't to say, oh, I've got to cut those relationships off.
Right.
But it was to say, and very clearly, we kind of joked about this. She said, I literally would say, if you need to sort of talk, if you need someone to listen, she said, I've got 5 minutes. And at the end of 5 minutes, that was it.
Oh,
she wasn't.
Wait, we haven't gotten to talking about boundaries yet. Yeah, I think that's what she's doing. Right?
She was so.
I love that.
She was so clear what she needed to grow. So she needed to show up. She needed her team to know, she knew what was going on.
Yes.
But she also started surrounding herself. She identified who else saw the opportunity here. She started surrounding herself with the people that she needed to be with, who were ready to go on the same sort of learning curve she was. It's that idea again, we need to be very clear about what we need, who we need, in all parts of our lives. So certainly, professionally, who are the people we learn from, grow with, do cool stuff with? We need to really think about who are the people we need, and we need to also think about who are people that drain us,
right?
That pull us down.
Yes.
Like they're the ones who don't want you to go to the gym and work your muscle. They're the opposite. And we cannot look at relationships at the expense of self.
Are there signs? Are there some telltale sort of signals that we should look for to determine whether somebody is someone that we can grow from and when we're around them?
Yeah.
Or somebody that we should avoid? Because some of I don't know about you guys, I'm a little bit better about it now than I used to be, but I haven't always been the best at figuring out who's good and who's bad for me. And so are there maybe some signals that we can look for?
Great question. Terrific question. And again, this idea of, and I don't mean to keep on returning to it, but it's so core here, is the understanding that self-aware. What are the things you need? Again, that idea of relationships can't be at the expense of self-care. So understanding yourself, what kind of people? And I mean this from a place of, and I think in the association space, so many of us are interested in people who want to make things happen, who want to do work and be committed to things that are mission driven. So start to look at the possibilities. Is this somebody who drains me? And really know yourself, know what drains you. Is this somebody who fills me up and gives me ideas? Kiki and I visited recently, and we got talking about, what do we like about our work and whatnot. And I was so struck when Kiki, you talked again. You really, really honed in several times on this idea of learning. Is that I love to always be learning, not for the idea of always applying it. I love learning. Think about people who feed you, who love to learn. It's not, I need people exactly like me, but it's knowing ourselves. We're so self-aware of what we need to grow. What are the things we need? So who are the people who bring that to us? And then being really aware of what drains us. Who drains us? Who makes us, sometimes we can't avoid those, as Janice couldn't avoid. She was a leader. She had to show up. So she was really aware of showing up to the degree she needed to. We joked about she was going to bring in her little kitchen timer and put it on the desk and sort of stop. Okay, you got 5 minutes, go. She decided not to.
Ding, ding, ding.
But she really, she said people were very clear. I knew what was going on.
Right.
I'm not trying to pretend that we are not a group going through adversity and stress. That's a reality. It's a reality in our organizations today. It's just part of being alive. Change is happening. How we respond to it, if I can, so that you tie the circles of control and the idea of relationships, as you mentioned, they tie together really well. So how to do it is to, again, go back to the place of being in touch with yourself.
I love that. I mean, I definitely, all the time, I'm trying to get this touches on an area that I am trying to develop very much, because I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of different people who, because of the association chat and other things, they want some time. They want time. They want to talk with me and maybe be on the show and all of this different stuff. But I find that I need to be very selective in order to take care of myself. There's only one me. And so what I found is that there are some people who, when I leave later, I feel like less than, or I feel like this sounds awful. Okay. So I'm so sorry, but like I've become a worse human being for being with them. Like I feel disappointed in myself, or the way that I just disappointed. Right. And I'm trying to limit how much time I spend with people like that, and really be with, focus on, if I have time to giving that time to people who I feel like we're able to help each other. I feel inspired when I leave, or I feel like I've helped or something. It feels good.
That's terrific self-awareness. That's terrific self-awareness, and it requires the deep work of, what do you value, what's important to you. Too often we allow ourselves to be in relationships that we call we use the term, perhaps you're familiar, bonding capital. You know, you're part of my network because we may have worked together, or we went to the same school, or we're in the same, same social circle.
Right.
The bonding is very clear. And many of us, those relationships last over many years.
Right.
We change all the time. We're evolving all the time.
God.
Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness for that. But bonding capital means sometimes we stay within just those that we're bonded with. Well, we're changing. The world's changing all the time. We're learning new things. Bridging capital is about creating relationships across differences, if you will, almost bridging. It may be. I love working with people early in their careers because it's great. It's great fun to see. Oh, wow, what are they doing? In that field now. How are they working on that? That's a bridging piece. That's not necessarily where I am in my career, or it may be, oh, I didn't know much about that industry. Well, that's terrific experience, terrific opportunity to get to learn about that. Bridging is across differences.
Oh, I love that.
Idea,
okay.
It's the idea of thinking about, what do you want to learn about? You said people who you're inspired by, who want to do things. I think that's the commonality. That's not bonding.
Well, I think about my friend Nabil, and he's been on he was co-host on the show, and we're trying to figure out like a new show for him to do. But Nabil is really passionate about graffiti art, and
cool.
And I love the fact that I'm learning more about graffiti artists and graffiti art just through my connection with him. And so I get really excited about that kind of stuff. And I feel like that is an area for growth. And my God, what a beautiful thing about life when you're able to learn and grow and just, see new things that you never really knew about. So,
knowing yourself and knowing what you want to learn about, what you want to contribute. Who else is in that space? What other things are they doing?
Right.
That's the bridging piece. Knowing ourselves, knowing what we value, really being clear with yourself. What is it I really value? What do I want to make happen in this world? We're all on a journey. Some of us are at a place, here, and some of us are over there. There's not only one place to be. It's this idea of anchoring around knowing yourself so that you can think about how do you show up. That has a lot to do with relationships, an awful lot to do. Janice was incredibly clear that she was going to thrive through that change because she said, as a senior leader in an association, this will come up again and again. So she said, why wouldn't I want to learn from this?
Let me give you, okay, so I have a great example to share where because I've been writing more, I'm doing this ketogenic challenge, and at night that means I don't have a cocktail in my hand. Instead, don't have a glass of wine. Instead, I've been writing.
Cool.
And in a couple of my blog posts, I've written about things that and that's not what the whole blog post is about, but I've mentioned that I'm interested in blockchain, or I'm interested in learning more about EU's data privacy laws and things like that. This has led to opportunities over and over again. And what I hear you saying is that when we're thinking about bridging and thinking about the ways that we show up, when we talk with people, when we meet with people, it really is sharing, and I guess enough of ourselves, being our authentic selves, but being self-aware enough that we're able to provide just enough information so that those synchronistic, those things can happen, those opportunities can happen.
Absolutely. It is really knowing about what you need to feed yourself with in terms of relationships. Okay. That is an absolute necessity. We talk a lot about protecting ourselves. Who do we need to, who may we need to limit our time with? Who do we need to be with? I think it's an even bigger question. I think it's an even bigger question, particularly as we go to the end of the year. We're going to see lots of people.
Are you doing this?
Oh, I do.
Now, listen, I have to tell a little secret. I got to be part of a luncheon the other day that I feel like that's what you're doing. Like, I feel like you do practice what you preach, and you and it was the most delightful.
Yeah.
Honestly, that could have been an entire day. I loved every single person at that table.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you could join it.
I did.
We brought together a group of, a small group of women, women association leaders to talk about some of the shared. We were looking at that idea of happiness.
It was amazing.
Thank you. I'm so glad you could join us. It's just terrific. There is bonding and bridging capital going on there. Mm-hmm. We are talking across differences. We're learning about each other. What do we learn from each other? And then I love the next step of what can we do together? Yeah. Where's the stuff that we make stuff happen together?
In the lobby, there was a discussion like that happening where it's like, hey, we might, maybe we should connect and talk about some. And I was like, how wonderful. I mean,
it's terrific. Yeah. I mean, it's terrific. The luncheon was terrific. I mean, the idea of learning, of learning from others is so much fun. It's just so much fun. Relationships are such a huge piece, and recognize those are within control and influence. Mm-hmm. Those are control and influence. Out of our influence is the reality, I would say. Out of our control is the reality of, we work on teams, we work in organizations. We are working with people that we know can cause us stress. We know relationships cause us stress. That's just a reality. That moves us pretty seamlessly to the, do we have a question?
Well, no, we have. So Cecilia said, I love Cecilia. By the way, thank you so much for tuning in.
I do too, Cecilia.
So she says, I think for me, it's about giving myself permission to limit time with people that are not good for me, but it's freeing to do it. Yeah. No, it is such a good idea to limit the time. I have the same sort of situation where, and like I said, I am trying to be very, just more aware of whom it is that I spend time with, and also proactively going about identifying people I want to know better, or I think that we could, if we had the chance to sit down at a table, it's that question of, if you could invite anyone to dinner, who would you? That old thing. And I've been trying to think of, so what if I did that? What if I just did that? Great question to ask yourself. What if you just did that? Yeah. What would that be? Kind of having a podcast is like that, where it's like, what's preventing me from asking? I can invite anyone to be on. Yep. All they could say is no. That's a terrific piece. Look how you just went right to control. It feels good. how you went right to control. I want to explore even deeper this idea of, we know relationships can also cause us a lot of stress. Yeah. That's just a reality. We need to think about boundaries, and those boundaries don't always look like just because someone asked you to coffee or asked you to do such and such. It doesn't mean we have to say no, but it also doesn't mean we have to say yes. So boundaries become really important. Going back to that idea of control, think about influence here. So I know so many people will say, and lots of really smart and otherwise really powerful coaching clients of mine will say things like, well, I can't say no. And we start to dig a little bit deeper. But could you say? So again, another quick story, and again, names changed to protect the innocent. Mark is a smart leader in an association, loves his work and loves his home life. He's a dad, actually, of 3 little ones. That is actually a true number, but name change to protect the innocent. Had a terrific boss and worked really well with his boss. There was end of year coming, so we're going back just a little bit, but again, end of year, with a lot of work to do. Lots of sort of that stress was going on. So his boss said to him, I need you now. So I need you to show up. And on the flip side, he knew he was at that point working so many hours that he wasn't able to feel exactly the sort of things that cause the stress, that mean our relationships become a little wobbly. When we're under stress, we show up differently. We don't have the same strong presence. We don't have the same level of confidence in our decisions. That's true. Questioning myself, wait, was that the right decision? Yeah, that is true. Is there another way we could do this? All those things, it hits our health. In all ways, it changes us. So Mark stepped back and went to his boss and had a good, strong conversation around
I know and understand the priorities, what we need to get done before the end of the year. I want to be certain I meet those needs. So what Mark did is he really clarified what was most important to his I'm going to say boss, what was most important to that boss to know, here's how I bring the most value. So he didn't go in the victim mode of, well, I just got to, be at my desk all day long. Reality is he didn't need to be at his desk a lot. There was a lot of work to get done, just reality. But by understanding what the priorities were, what were the most important pieces, he went to a place, he figured out how he would get that done. He ended up employing some new tools. He brought in some new time management tools. And I don't mean a big heavy lift of let me figure out, what other apps are available. He found some new ways to work with it, to get that work done. It put him in a place of let me be more creative here. Boundaries in no way look like no. When people say, well, I can't say no. No is not necessarily the right boundary. Boundary often looks at how do we together create something. So when people want to get together, no, you cannot always do that. But how can you engage? There's a lot of different ways we can engage with people.
God, I love that. I love that so much.
Boundaries are a slippery slope because we sort of think, oh, if I go no, it's going to ruin, that'll be the end of the relationship.
Yeah.
Thinking about how do we, certainly on a personal level, but I mean this on a work level, I mean this on a team level, really understanding what do our teammates need, not what do I think they need. What do they need? I served in associations as a senior leader for a number of years, and when I would be on teams, really taking time to engage with my team members to understand what did they need from me. I changed the whole conversation when I would say, no, I can't be at the 4 o'clock meeting. Even though my instinct was always, no, I'll be at that 4 o'clock meeting. No, I can't be at that 4 o'clock meeting, but I want to support you. How can I help you? What do you need from me?
Oh, okay. So that's a script we all need to commit to memory. So later, just so you know, this is me. I am going to type that out and save it. I'm going to label it scripts. It's going to go, because I do this. I have to have certain things that I practice saying until they become part of me.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And because there are some difficult things that some difficult situations you have to learn how to navigate. And for me, I need to practice that. Sometimes I need the backup of actually really saying that, having something in front of me where I'm like practicing word by word to say it.
Absolutely.
But it works. And then eventually it becomes you own it. It becomes a part, and it's naturally a part of what you do. And so I'm going to write that down. That's good.
That confidence piece.
That's good.
That is that confidence piece. And when we are truly resilient, we have our confidence is there. We don't allow imposter syndrome or other things that want to make us a little bit smaller. Imposter syndrome, without going down that path, it's at the time that we just don't feel as confident as we are. We're allowing things to make us feel smaller. Perfect example is being able to say that to ourselves. That's part of that self-aware. What language do I need? So that's a terrific. Thanks. That's a great call out.
Yay.
Okay, great. Terrific one. A terrific one. And that leads us pretty naturally to that idea of you're being aware of what kind of care you need for yourself.
Yes.
So talk about self-care. Yes. What do you do for yourself?
So self-care, I'll give you a great example.
Perfect.
And we talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
So, but for all of you, I wake up extremely early because my most valuable time I know is in the morning. And I also know these are like the magic hours. So if I wake up earlier than the rest of my household, then I can take care of myself in a way that I get what I need before anybody's aware, before anybody else knows. So I wake up at like 4 o'clock every morning.
Wow.
And I'm trying to do most days of the week. I'm working out at 5 or 5:15 every morning.
Wow.
And once I get that done, I'm trying to integrate a little bit of meditation, starting with like 5 to 10 minutes, because I am squirrely and I want to run around. And I always pray. And at the end of the day, I always have my gratitudes. Like I always try to write down gratitudes. Yeah. And I can tell a difference when I don't have the prayer and gratitudes part too. Yeah. So I have to have the workout. I have to have the prayer. I have to have the gratitudes. And if I fit that in, I know that I can handle anything that comes my way, but I need to take care of myself first.
You are prioritizing.
Yes.
You are prioritizing self-care.
Yes.
And there is certainly some behavioral research that says women tend to lower that priority piece of self-care. It in no way says all women do rather, I'm sorry, but rather it says we need to be particularly mindful of it as women and as men and as leaders and as people committed to, I want to say, sort of finishing strong. During this period, this is not the time to sort of, again, let everything go to the wayside. There may be some changes. Maybe it means, I'm going to be off schedule a little bit. I'm going to have family visiting, or got a lot of extra commitments. That's just a reality. Again, resiliency means we ride the wave a little bit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things are up, sometimes they're going to be down, mm-hmm. but we have that muscle that gets us through. So that idea of your prioritizing, I mean, when Kiki talked about 4
I know, you should have seen everybody around the table. They're like, oh.
But did you notice the common denominator was all around early?
Yes, most people did wake up early like that. It may not be 4, but it was like 4:30, 5 o'clock.
It was, it was really interesting. Mm-hmm. I certainly that kind of self-care, sleep, exercise, in whatever way you say you exercise. There's not one size fits all. Right. Like anything else, that muscle's we're not all going to develop the exact same muscle. We are different. We are literally wired differently. So what for one of us is terrific self-care, for someone else is not. Yeah. I think the most basic though is sleep. We need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. We do. We know without that we cannot show up at our best. So sleep, a huge piece.
Yeah, I get to bed early. I do.
Of course, we all had to find out what time do you go to bed. One of the commonalities I have seen in very successful individuals and even teams is the idea of hobbies, outside interests, things besides their work that drive them. Teams that do things like volunteering together, teams that even have activities, might do an activity together, those kinds of things that give us an outside interest. I'm thinking of somebody I know, and he said he's a wine collector, and he knows everything. He's a real wine connoisseur and travels all over to explore different wines. That gives him extraordinary sort of pleasure and joy to plan the trips, to go back and sort of visit around that bottle of wine, the memories it brings back. It doesn't matter what the hobby is. It matters that we have some level of outside interest. And you're in the middle of raising a strong, powerful young girl. Yes, that's a lot of time.
Yeah,
that's a lot of time. So we have to think about what's realistic for us. A lot of your time probably goes to Girl Scouts and other kinds of things that she's involved with. We got to find prioritizing self-care. You may have a lot of things going on in your world. You may be deeply committed to a yoga practice that takes a lot of time. That's terrific. That's terrific self-care. Whatever time we can find, we need to carve it out. And again, it's intentionality. Mm-hmm. If we are going to be going through a stressful period as we finish up the year, and I hope we've made that business case that we want to finish strong, we need to think about really prioritizing ourselves, our self-care. Like they say on the plane, right? The airline directions, put your own oxygen mask on before you turn it off the other.
It's so true. Now I have you right here. Let me dig a little bit deeper because, Cecilia, she says, I love you guys too. You're both so uplifting and amazing. You're so sweet.
Thank you,
yes, thank you so much. So what I have encountered in the past when I was not fully into, I guess, owning my stuff, owning myself, and I was going through a hard time. And I talk about this a lot, so I'm sorry, but I did not feel curious about anything. I realized that I had been lost in making a lot of assumptions, and had fallen into playing a role that it was of myself. It was a role that in my mind, this is the person I was. I did not cook. I was not domestic. I did not like to sweat. All of these things, right? I wear black. I do wear black. But the thing was that I had made I had all these ideas, and it really took the joy and idea that change can happen, that we all change. The difference between being a runner and not being a runner is running.
Yep.
So like you can change what you are anytime. And I think that for some people out there they're ambitious, they know that they want more, but maybe they're lost. Maybe they're in a place where they're not even sure what they're interested in anymore. And they're searching for it. And they're like, you know what? I don't like crafts, and I don't have a 9-year-old. And so Girl Scouts is not in my future. So what about them? Where would you suggest that they look? They know they need to develop some sort of outside interest, but they're not feeling it.
Yeah,
you know,
it's great. It's a great question, and I don't in any way mean to minimize. It's not an uncommon thing.
No, I don't think it is.
I think many of us can relate to that on a personal level. That idea of having other ways we care for ourselves. That feeling of I don't know what it is, or I feel really stuck. This is the way I've always done it. It's an exploration. I want to say it's an exploration. Really explore, really get curious. So that idea of I'm stuck, recognizing, being able to say I'm stuck is almost the beginning of saying I'm stuck. There's terrific resources. I would love for people to spend a little time. A favorite of mine is Martha Beck's book, Finding Your North Star. Starting to think about what excites you. This is men and women. I talk about this all the time. I'm not getting joy in other parts of my life. So I'm not sure what it is that I need. Not an uncommon thing. Again, the resilience, that strong muscle to recognize sometimes it's going to be really clear to you, and you may be involved. I think about my own journey here in terms of volunteering. When my daughters were younger, I was very involved in volunteering and things they were involved in. They're older now, and so that put me in a path of stepping back. I remember when my younger daughter graduated from college, I sent an email out to a group of friends that I really valued, that I really trusted, and I said, I've completed most of my volunteer work related to my girls. I wondered if you guys can tell me a little bit about what things you volunteer in where you believe you can make a difference, and it's having a thing. So I thought my go-to place was to reach out to others.
That's so smart.
That's how I'm just part of a new group right now that I'm doing some work with, and it was through a professional friend. She reached out to me to say, hey, we're looking for some new board members around this. I'm noting that a lot of us in the association world recognize our work's really important, but we're looking for opportunities to serve in other ways. So obviously ASA is a terrific way for many of us to volunteer, a terrific way. And there's other ways as well. I think I'm noting on people's LinkedIn profiles, I see all the time looking at, considering open to volunteer opportunities or serving on boards. Great way to grow those skills. Terrific way to grow those skills as you think about your own journey.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, okay, 51, 53. Oh my gosh. Wow. So time is rolling on by. So as we're approaching, now we've talked about all of these different, we've talked about the circles, we've talked about the different levels of setting boundaries. What else is there that we need to think about as we're approaching the end of the year?
Terrific question here, because it's I want to say the full wrap here. The reality is we have to take time to recover. We live in a society that's just keep on pushing on. Come on, grit. Come on, keep on going through it. I don't know how many other people can relate to this. I think about the end of when I was in college. By the end of every semester, I would almost always get sick because I would pull the all-nighters like everyone else. It was sort of part of the process. We'd work and work and work, and then I'd arrive home from college, and I would almost always be sick because I had taken no time to rebuild that muscle. I stopped. I just thought, if I just stop, that'll recover. We know that's not enough to recover. So I want to suggest to you, as you're going into the last 55 days of 2017, you think about what are you doing to help yourself through this period in terms of recovering, not just stopping. So we finish a particular project and we're immediately on to the next. I'm hearing more and more about this. So many of my clients are talking about the fact, the minute I finish this, I'm right on to the next thing. There's no time to stop, celebrate successes, reflect.
Oh, yes.
It's not a nice to do thing. It's a must do thing. For those who are leading teams, think about this. got to take time to rebuild, not just stop. Stop is an entirely different thing. We need to take time to all the way rebuild. So if we have been going at 100 miles an hour, we don't need to just stop and the next day show up and, oh, now I'm at 75 miles an hour. We need to give ourselves time to really rebuild. That may look like reflection time. It may look like celebratory time on the personal and the professional side. So that's a final piece I wanted to really make sure I get out here. Is it's not just grit and get through it. We know that. We know that mentality. We live in a society that celebrates hard work. I celebrate my clients' hard work. I believe in hard work. It's what's needed today. It's how we get the results. You've got to be highly competent at your work. To be competent and confident and show up well means we've got to prioritize that self-care, and we need to take time to really care for ourselves. And that doesn't just mean, stop and be done. It means to rebuild, to take time. If you will, we've overused our muscle. We've got to let it rest.
I love that. Yeah. And what immediately comes to mind, two things actually. One, the idea that we actually need that room for our minds to process what we've just been through, so that we can actually make whatever it is that we've worked on, that learning can develop, that learning can take hold. Yeah. And then the other thing is that, even when you look at running in a marathon or a half marathon, you're never supposed to run all those miles and then just stop. As much as I hate it, I hate that. I want to run in one marathon one day, but I've done a half marathon, and you don't stop running. You actually keep moving. Yeah. You just don't. You're not running at the pace you were, but you keep moving a little bit so that you can process. You can give your muscles a chance to cool down. It helps you later. But I feel like it's not just your muscles that do that, or your leg muscles that need that time, but you need to sort of work through what you've just accomplished. Yeah,
it's a huge piece. If you find that you are in a place where you are taking your work with you all the time, this is again that place of, if I work for 10 hours and I come home with my phone, the reality we all live in today, right? It's a 24/7 world we live in. If I am not setting the kind of boundaries that we're talking about, so I'm not in any way saying we don't need to check our, maybe check our emails, be responding to things. Depends on the work you're doing. So there's lots of reality. Depends on the work you're doing. You're the one who needs to decide that. That's within your influence. To some degree, it may be within your control. But that's yours to decide how you set those boundaries and look at it. I'm not going to be on all night. I'm going to be, maybe from, at 9, I'm putting my children, but my children are older, but if they were younger, putting my kids down to sleep, well, then it would be, okay, until my kids are down to sleep, I'm not going to be back on email. It's finding a way to allow our brains to quiet down so they can be powered back up in small ways, our phones every single day, and in major ways, we stop, we reflect back on our work.
I love that. And the Scott Eblin book talks about needing to pace yourself to be the best self.
Terrific.
And how taking time off makes you better. Thanks so much for adding to this conversation, Cecilia. I really, truly appreciate it. And I think that we are coming up on our time. Carol, I want to give you a chance to maybe just bring it all together, maybe give us some final thoughts before we close out. And then also tell people how they can find you online, because I want them to connect with you online.
Terrific. I'd love to. Well, definitely. Let's connect. So let's bring it back together. We are all about what we're talking about. We collectively talk about here is this idea of creating awareness. What my goal today is to create awareness about the need to prepare, to think about that muscle. Without awareness around this, it's real difficult to do. So as we get 55 days or 35 days, or if you're listening to this 10 days before the end of the year, I want to really, I just want to reinforce that idea. The way we leave, the way we end our year matters every bit, if not more, than the way we will start our year. So please take the time, create a plan. Hopefully the behaviors that I've noted really successful people have used will help you in building out your muscle.
I love it. Isn't she a pro? I love this woman so much.
Thank you, and I love you.
Thank you for being on the show. So I know that at Carol Vernon is your Twitter handle.
Is my Twitter handle.
Yes.
You can find me on LinkedIn at Carol Vernon, and website is www, of course, COMM matters.com. For our group, our coaching group is Communication Matters. So commatters.com. It's triple M's.
I love it.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
include me today. I
Yes.
thoroughly enjoyed, and I hope our conversations can continue. And Cecilia, special shout out to you. Thank you so much for contributing to this conversation. It was really fun to have you here.
It was fantastic. And guys, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this week and every week. Listen, if you want to listen to this show later, you want to share it with other people, subscribe online, join Association Chat. It's a private group on Facebook. You can also find associationchat.com online, where we give you updates on who's coming on soon, a little bit more about the show. And then every Monday, there's a new show, a new episode that comes out on iTunes and on I almost said Spotify, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Google Play, and on Stitcher. So until next time, everyone, I forgot to give a shout out to Fontiva, our sponsor. I was so excited to be here. But Fontiva, if you're listening on Crowdcast right now, you can click on the call to action button at the bottom. That's going to take you to Fontiva's fancy website, and you can give them a shout out because they are kind enough to support our community, and we appreciate it very much. So until next time, everyone, I hope you keep exploring and keep asking those questions, because I can't tell you enough that finishing strong in 2017, it's going to make all the difference in the world. So thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Hey, Jed, I see you on here. Oh, I love it. Thank you for joining.
Bye, guys.
Yay.